Welcome to Framework and sort of the representative James Cameron film. This is Terminator 2 Judgment Day from 1991. One of the most famous movies ever made. Am I right on that, or is it my generational bias? I don't know. I am one of the hosts of Framework, John, and with me is the other host of Framework, Al. How are you today, Al?
I am great. I am right in the pocket of my generational bias, so this is fantastic for me.
Yes, and joining us, returning to the program, our old friend Michael Martin. How are you, sir?
Very good. I am comfortable in my Generation X generational bias as far as this movie goes as well, so that'll be interesting.
It is cruel to refer to him as our old friend in this context.
I know, I said that, I was like, ooh.
I recall this very clearly as the first R-rated movie I saw in a theater. And up until a week ago or so, I would have told you I was like probably 10 or 11 when I saw this one. And then you mentioned like this came out in 1991. Yeah. So I'm running the math. I must have been 8 years old in the theater watching this movie, which seems way too young, even though this is, a kiddie R movie.
I think it's fine. I think any kid can see this movie, honestly.
I think for our first R-rated film, it's probably a pretty good one. I mean, my first R-rated film was Alien. So
yeah, that's too much. That's too much for sure.
It is. Aliens is a better first R-rated movie than Alien for sure.
Yeah. This might be the best R-rated movie for kids, though. The best first R-rated movie.
I would agree with that.
Well, similar to the Aliens movies, Terminator 2 is a better first R-rated movie than Terminator 1 would be, I think.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Although I would dispute the Aliens being a better R-rated film. I think it's a different kind of R-rated film, although we're kind of veering off topic here. But
it's better than Alien, at least. I mean,
yes, I think I was older than Al when I saw Alien than he saw. I was 11 when I saw Alien, so I was 11 for my first R-rated film. But that was a different time, folks. That was before streaming, before pervasive cable, before all that stuff. So like you see R-rated film, you had to get mostly your parents' permission or to sneak into somewhere. So.
But even a time before when R-rated meant something different, because there was a time before the PG-13 designation had even been created,
That's
right?
Correct.
Around Alien.
Because
that didn't come. PG-13 didn't come out for 4 or 5 years after Alien, probably, right?
Yeah, it was.
Right.
Yeah, it was
Gremlins, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Was that the first one to get PG-13?
Yeah, Temple of Doom was the one that like everyone was like, "Oh shit, we need another rating."
I thought it was. I thought Red Dawn was the first one to get PG-13, but I guess I was wrong on that.
Yeah, they're probably all about the same time.
It's the summer of '83, and then when it all happens. I'm not sure which has the
Temple of Doom was '84.
Am I wrong? Okay. Yeah, the summer of '84 then. And it's the same time Gremlins came out. I think those came out like within a week of each other or something like that.
That could explain how we're getting those mixed up then. But
is that Ghostbusters summer too? That's kind of a PG-13 almost.
Oh, it was Red Dawn, by the way.
Oh, okay. Well, we don't know shit.
Well, here's the thing I think about Terminator 2, though, is that it is definitely an R-rated movie. But you could easily see how if Cameron were inclined, and if it were made today, like almost certainly would make a PG-13 version of the same movie. I mean, part of the like dramatic incident of this movie is basically John Connor telling the Terminator, like Arnold Terminator machine, no, turn your settings down to PG-13.
Yeah. A great conceit. That's so good. It's so funny. It's
that was actually a difficult selling point when Cameron first went to Schwarzenegger for the movie, because Schwarzenegger read the script and he said, "You know that I don't kill anybody, right?" And Cameron was like, "Yeah, that's kind of the point." And Schwarzenegger had to be sold on that. He was like, "I don't. How are we going to make it me? It's a Terminator." And he wasn't getting it at first. It took some selling on Cameron's part to convince him that he was going to be great in the role and it was going to be great for his career, even though he didn't kill anybody.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like Cameron having the foresight to kind of decide, like, oh no, even though this movie is going to be rated R, what we have to do is make it friendly and accessible to everyone. To bring this kind of into the mainstream from the frankly like pretty creepy original film. The scuzzy, sleazy, little dark sci-fi yarn that the original Terminator is, getting exploded up in this way into something that is basically Jurassic Park. That it's just a pure ride, and it's for mass audiences. It's almost weird that this is rated R because they're going for something that is so universally appealing, and yet at the same time it has to be because it's so violent. It
is the Terminator as a family film. Yeah, I mean, it is about a family unit. Yeah, it gets very explicit about that. About Sarah Connor's voiceover musing about the Terminator as the ideal stepdad.
I love it. Yeah, one of the that read a lot crazier to me now than it used to, I gotta say.
Yeah, back when you were a kid, and it was like, yeah, I want the Terminator to be my sort of like pet / dad. Like that's it's like fun. And then now I'm like, whoa, this is a big leap you just made, lady. Because like it's not like that the voiceover up to that point had been focused on parenting or whatever, anything.
Right.
So she's like, I saw it so clearly now. The Terminator would be the
monotone like, delivery. Yeah.
You see what now?
It would never get drunk and beat him. Okay, you're nuts still. Man, she is nuts in this. Gloriously nuts. Yeah. Like, just you forget how crazy she is in this. We'll talk about her at length, I'm sure.
Do we need to do any like table setting of establishing the premise of this movie? Like,
it's the same as the first, basically. It's the same movie. It's amazing.
It's better. It's more complicated than the first. I mean, it's the iterations are that, this time the Kyle Reese character is the Arnold Terminator, who's the bad guy from the first movie. And the Arnold Terminator position has been taken up by a new, even more, deadly liquid metal robot played by Robert Patrick. The T-1000, just absolutely one of the best movie monsters ever created. I would honestly, this has to be like generational bias or whatever, and having seen the second one first, but for my money, the T-1000 is an even better like monster than the original Terminator, which is pretty perfect as it is.
I would have to agree with that. And maybe it's simply because you have Arnold there in a role that fits him even better. I guess the sort of
it fits the arc of his career.
I suppose that's the way.
And I would agree. I mean, despite being the elder person on this episode, I would agree with it. I think as classic as the first one is, I actually think that I think Robert Patrick's the T-1000 is a better, scarier villain, more effective, and I think it's even aged better. They couldn't have known this at the time, but him being a cop, I think, has just aged it even better. I think that him being that position of of authority like that, and what we can kind of read into that. From what I know, Cameron didn't. I think it'd be easy to claim Cameron had a lot of foresight, especially because they were filming this around the same time as the Rodney King stuff going on in LA. But from what I've read, it was more he was just basically having fun inverting authority figure. Like there wasn't a lot of thematic, a lot of intentionality. It was more playing with audience expectations. It was really kind of the beginning and end of it for him.
I had heard they were actually shooting this during the Rodney King beating, like while they're filming a tape, like
down the street.
It was like a couple blocks away from where the beating was taking place.
Damn.
Yep.
Wow. I think that the biker bar where Arnold gets his clothes is like really, very close to where the Rodney King beating went down.
Yeah. I don't want to say that's cool, but interesting.
I think one of the reasons Patrick and the T-1000 work better is because even in '84, Schwarzenegger was pretty well known. He wasn't Arnold Schwarzenegger like he would be in a few years, but he'd had a pretty big hit with Conan, and he just was culturally really well known. It might have been something of a joke, but while he was physically intimidating and he is kind of scary in the movie, I think Robert Patrick, because he's more normal sized, and yet his movements, his implacability, his ability to be a cop or be anyone or anything, I think that makes him so much more effective and just more, threatening than a big Hulk that you can spot from 4 blocks away.
Well, it's a direct swap of the body types from the first one. Like Patrick is the lithe dancer, and
it is almost a more impressive physical performance even than Arnold's in the first one, which is we talked about being pretty great.
I would have to agree with that. It's a fantastic physical performance, Robert Patrick, in this. Everything about him in this is, I mean, this is the kind of role that allows you to work for the rest of your life, as he has. Like it's you can't ever take something like this away from him. You know, this is an amazingly effective movie monster. Yeah,
I give him some credit for not allowing himself to be typecast as the heavy for the rest of his career either. Like, I don't feel like he played just, the brutal villain over and over again after this. I mean, when I think of him outside of this, I think of The Sopranos, where he plays the biggest sad sack schmuck ever. But I'm sure Robert Patrick played some more bad guys. But,
sure,
Was he in Copland? Am I misplacing that?
It feels like he's spiritually in Copland.
Was
Was he the bad guy in that though? Because I don't.
Well, I mean, most people were bad guys in that, so because it was about corrupt cops. But
I'm thinking of Ray Liotta in it, who looks very Patrick-ish.
Yeah, I mean, I had to look it up. I don't know. And I always think of him as the replacement for David Duchovny on
Agent John Doggett, of course.
Yeah. And I thought he was good on that. I felt like he got kind of like, frankly, kind of got screwed because they should have just done a soft reboot with him and Reyes rather than holding over. But I liked him in it. I thought he did as well.
I thought they did. That's exactly what they did, but it didn't really work.
They kept Anderson hanging around, and they eventually brought Mulder back. So it was a really weird kind of. Yeah,
they needed a harder reboot then. Yeah,
they did, or something like it. Yeah, or just to end the show, maybe.
In hindsight, that always seems like a perfectly cromulent option. Yeah,
but he is good in it, and he's memorable in it as a hero. He's been on a lot of TV since then. I mean, that's a big thing that he does. But yeah, he never became a giant movie star, but everyone remembers him for the rest of his career because of this performance, and ultimately he's probably had the best size career you would want, which is somewhat recognizable and certainly rich and certainly working, but not a megastar and who has to manage his career. It's exactly what you want, or I would think anyway.
Well, for a certain type of actor, sure. I mean, and if he wanted, it seems like he is that type of guy, because it doesn't seem like he tried to parlay this into being, hey, all right, James, for Terminator 3, so I get to be the good guy this time, right? But it is just, it's a fantastic movie monster. I mean, obviously the conceit here, which we mentioned in passing, is that his Terminator is made of entirely liquid metal, so he can shapeshift while also being an unstoppable monster. And they shoot him, and it just sort of like makes holes, like
metal impact ripples.
Yeah, it's like metal Play-Doh that, and then it just reforms itself. And so they're just emptying clips into this guy for the sake of slowing him down for seconds at a time. And Cameron constructs the action sequences so wonderfully that the difference of half a second of him like being on this side of the elevator door, that side, is always enormous.
The fun they can have with him, the stuff they have him do, all the little gags and things that happen, that all his abilities, that he can form knives and stabbing weapons, all that stuff. It's so well deployed. It makes so much sense. You're never questioning what this guy is or what he can do. It's so well communicated, and every moment is effective. The silver mannequin stuff that he, that whenever he's walking through fire or changing into another thing, like this kind of like opened the door on morph effects for the rest of the 90s, and they never looked as good, mentioning Jurassic Park again. It's sort of that kind of trailblazing, amazing CGI that then immediately got overused and was never as effective as it was in this first film. I don't know if this is the first morph technology, but it's certainly like the landmark morph technology.
It really,
really? Absolutely.
It had been used a little bit before, I think, especially in commercials, but I think this. You're right. This was it. This was
that Michael Jackson music video,
right? Which came after.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So, but yeah, it was
this was like in Fruit by the Foot commercials, like 2 years later. This was
that's right.
Yeah, it was everywhere, like in no time. It was really strange how quickly it got adopted and used across. I mean, TV commercials, filmed just everywhere. So
I mean, it's not that strange in that it's freaking cool. Once they made it accessible, like, yeah, of course, Fruit by the Foot's going to seize on it. Why?
It did promulgate quickly, but I think in context, it's different because I think we're used to effects appearing once in any format and then suddenly kind of being everywhere. Yeah. And back, 30 years ago.
The Matrix.
Right. I mean, and I think that's the one that really, well, actually, I think it's this morphing one that was really the kind of the game changer with that, because up to then, any kind of new visual effect or any kind of innovation took a long time because they were all fairly expensive and they were all fairly time consuming. I mean, it's the reason you didn't see a lot of convincing Star Wars-esque effects in commercials during the 1980s, because it cost a shitload of money and time. And then with the morphing, because it was all digital, it was able to, quickly just boom, kind of domino across formats and mediums. And that's why within months, within a year, we saw the morphing in the Michael Jackson video. We saw it in just regular commercials, and it's everywhere. And that it just got faster and faster to the point now is that, I mean, we literally have commercials using technology we haven't seen in movies yet, and vice versa, and all that kind of stuff. But it was actually kind of surprising how quickly, I mean, just as a person living at the time and being older, seeing something in a $100 million movie, and then, I don't know if it was literally within weeks, but within weeks or months, all of a sudden seeing the exact same effects to sell soda. It's like, what the hell? It was really strange.
Even if it didn't become immediately dirt cheap, it became much faster. So
yes,
it was possible to recreate it much faster. And obviously to lesser effect than here, as we were saying, that the effects here always seem to be to a purpose within the scene of there's really not much in the way of just showing off as an effects reel. The way even like we're talking about the Abyss, that water tentacle scene felt a little bit like just kind of like playing around with their new toy a bit for how long it went on. But here, nothing stands out as a like showy effect sequence in this day and age. Like it all has some sort of, bearing on what's going on at that moment in the story. And the other way that I think the T-1000 effects are so good in a way that even later effects would screw up is that almost to a point, there's maybe like one or two points where, like, say when he's oozing his way into the helicopter cockpit, perhaps.
That's such a great, it's so great still.
Oh yeah, it's still so great. But that's one of the only points where it feels like maybe it's a bit weightless as he's doing the ooze through there. But whenever he's in human form, they never seem to lose sight or a feel of the fact that this is a creature made of metal for how liquid it is. Still, that he probably weighs 900 pounds and he's like clanking on the floor. And when he gets hit by something, it is either, if it's not glooping straight through him, it's making a clanging sound like you're bashing it off of a metal grate. And it makes him feel weighty and heavy and all the more threatening for that. He has to be a threat to Arnold, who is an indestructible. I mean, in addition to being Arnold, mass of celebrity meat, he is also playing an indestructible killing machine that can be shot. And the T-1000 is able to, by contrast, make the Arnold Terminator feel vulnerable.
Yeah, he's on the back foot this entire movie, and that's pretty impressive considering that he's Arnold at the height of his power. And it's all credit to everything done with the T-1000. Every decision made on that thing is perfect. I love all the use of lo-fi stuff too. Like when they just attach like physical things to Robert Patrick's shirt to do the bullet ripples.
Basically, like foil squibs almost.
Or they give him like little prong hands. They replace his arm with a metal prong. When he's chasing behind him in the car. All that stuff works really well because it does kind of give this stuff a tactile physicality.
I was going to build on or kind of pivot on what Al said about every effect shot serving a purpose. I was going to throw out just a pop quiz. Just make a ballpark guess. How many digital effect shots are in this movie?
I don't even know how to do that. I don't know what a lot or a little would be. Like, how many shots are in a movie?
Well, I mean, I think
it's going to be low. It's going to be low. I know that. Like, it's going to be under. Especially
it's 42.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
Compared
I don't know how many shots are in a movie, but I know that's low for this.
It's really low. I mean, if you go by comparison, I think if I'm correct, Phantom Menace just 8 years later, I think had several hundred. I mean, but that's still low now for our standards. I mean, it was exponentially more, but only 42 shots in the movie required digital special effects.
Sure.
There were a ton of visual effects shots, but only 42 of them required the CGI.
But in a modern action movie, it's unusual for there to be a scene where nobody is wearing like at least like a green arm glove, on, to make the Winter Soldier's Terminator arm or whatever. There's always, if it's not a green screen in the background, or it's somebody's got the tennis ball on the pole somewhere, somebody's got a rig on their face to add some digital scarring or something later,
or it's just in the Mandalorian studio, and it'd be more impressive to list the not CGI shots,
right?
That's kind of where we are now. If there's 42 not CGI shots in one of those now, that's the more impressive number.
Well, we're going to freaking we're using the Phantom Menace as our touchstone, but also like we're going to get to Avatar sooner rather than later, where it literally is like
the entire thing is
of the movie. Yeah. Even the human non-anime scenes, they're still in like the sci-fi future where I'm sure there's just green screen stuff everywhere in all those shots.
Yeah.
Is this the most effective, most impressive technical innovation of Cameron's career, though? Is it in this film? I mean, the T-1000 is, I don't know, that's a tough one. And that's sort of, his bread and butter to be a trailblazing engineer of visual effects. But man,
I think that's a question that's best answered when we get to Avatar, or asked at that point.
Okay, sure. Yeah. Maybe even the episode after we finish talking about all of them.
Yeah.
It is sort of his big thing. Yeah. But,
my preliminary vote is yes, absolutely. But
the same here. I would also vote yes on that one too, because it as advanced as Avatar is, and I'm sure I'm speaking out of my ass, and there's a lot of people in the industry who would correct us. It feels like, as far as the effects on film and the morphing effect, and just the use of CGI was much more transformative for film versus the effects of Avatar. Mm-hmm. I mean, Avatar, at least I don't know behind the scenes, but as far as a moviegoer, Avatar to me felt like, other than this taking Jar Jar and doing it much better, it felt like the biggest effect was, let's make everything in 3D now, and it's like, I'm really glad that seems to have died for the most part, because
that hurt us. That was a bad one.
Yeah, Avatar may well be able to beat it if the criteria is just being more transformative in the film industry, but in terms of that transformation being a good thing,
right?
The T-1000 wins out there, I would say.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I mean, I would almost say I think Titanic is the main competition it has, actually. The stuff done for Titanic, I think, is a little underrated. I think that's the one that could be in competition with T2.
Well, it's a totally different thing again than Avatar, because that is trying to be seamless and not noticeable, and Avatar is an animated movie. So,
right.
We're talking too much about Avatar already. Let's
there'll be plenty of time to talk about that.
So
3 hours 10 minutes for The Weight of Water, by the way.
Oh my God.
10 minutes.
Oh my God. Wow.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, we don't have time to cry about this now. No. But all right. So we're still establishing the Terminators are there. The Terminators this time, though, T-1000's not hunting Sarah Connor anymore. She's hunting John Connor himself, our little boy king.
Why didn't they just do that? I don't know.
That's a good question.
I mean, why not go back and kill baby Sarah Connor? I mean, that you can ask all these sorts of. You can just keep going backwards with this stuff. It's one of those.
There's a story, or the question that arises as we keep doing more and more iterations of Terminator, how they always manage to send more advanced copies than the last time, but to farther in the future, or not as far in the past for them, and it's hard to justify the. The continuing technological evolution of the Terminators, given like what is established about the future war and how this is happening. I'll give him a break on this, that the T-1000 is a prototype that was not quite, was shoved out a little early before it was fully prepared. And my headcanon for why they can't just send him back farther in time to kill Sarah Connor when she was younger even, is just that the time machine mechanics require more energy to send them farther back in time. So they sent them back basically as far back as they could to try and get Sarah Connor when they had sort of hard information on where she would be. Because that's another thing that I think this movie establishes somewhat, that she is deliberately living off the grid after the first movie and having John Connor live as much of his life off the grid as possible. So they have to send him the T-1000 back to this time frame because this is when she's been locked away and he is in the foster system, and there is a computer record of John Connor's existence.
I was kind of like doing my own headcanon with assigning the deja vu rules of time travel, which is
you have to map those out for me.
Okay, well, it's the Tony Scott movie with Denzel Washington. So the way it is that they have a machine that allows them to peer backwards in time, but it's not anywhere. It's like you can only peer back a set amount of time. So time is always moving forward. So like at 4:00 today, you could look back at noon, but at 4:30 today, the farthest back you could look is 12:30. Right. So it's one of the things that maybe their time travel technology only allows them the farthest date back keeps moving forward as their own time keeps moving forward.
There's a default setting that they can go back 35, 40 years, whatever.
Yeah.
So I do feel like once you start trying to figure out how it all works, you're going to lose.
Yeah.
You know, intentionally, the paradox of this whole thing is not solved. It's an insoluble problem. And they know that, so they don't get into it. But it also means that they can kind of do whatever they want, and it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Like I said, for as far as these two movies go,
right,
the stuff I laid out works well enough for my head to wrap around. So anyway, John Connor is now a 10-year-old. Well, the movie establishes him as a 10-year-old because they kind of stuck themselves with this timeline by having Kyle Reese recite some specific dates in the first movie. But he is clearly written and performed to be a 13-year-old.
Yeah, that is a distinct difference, yes. Mm-hmm.
Which is fine. They should have just said he was 13, or maybe just not even mentioned the name, not had his date of birth show up on screen or whatever, or not established exactly what the year is here. But
they didn't. Did they? They didn't set this is actually 1991. They don't actually say that, do they?
They don't actually. And Alice is right. They actually the movie technically takes place in 1994 because they reference 1984 in the movie, and John is supposed to be 10 years old, so it actually is set in 1994.
I believe on the police computer when the T-1000 is looking him up, it says age 10.
Yeah.
Which again, just not necessary. You don't need to just leave it fuzzy. It would be my one note for Terminator 2, really. So young John Connor is played by Edward Furlong. One of the points of controversy of this movie among fans is a lot of people really hate this performance.
That's unfair. It's uncharitable.
Mm-hmm. It's not the best performance, but if you're 8 years old, and never been to an R-rated movie before, and it's 1991, this set the template for what sort of
90s kids. Yeah,
90s kids. Yeah, that you would see this kid trying to sell you Foot by the Foot and Gushers in every commercial throughout the rest of the 90s.
Yeah, the subversiveness of Bart Simpson.
Right.
The raw sex appeal of JTT. Yes.
Okay, here comes Grumpy Generation X to fuck this shit up. So I'm gonna say, just on subsequent rewatch, and I actually watched, really interestingly, I watched this a few years ago with my daughter, she's a millennial, and
well, technically so am I, but I don't think we're the same generation.
Yeah. No, you're not. But I will say, honest, my hot take on this is I think Furlong, not to slight him, but I think centering the movie on Connors is a weak spot. My hot take is I wish the movie was either firmly centered on Sarah or even more radically on Miles Dyson. I feel like those two characters are far more interesting than a 10-year-old. And I will say his voice does really great on me during the course of the movie.
His voice is cracking so aggressively throughout this movie.
It is. It's.
And 11-year-old me strongly disagrees with you.
I'm sure.
I wanted to be this kid so much when I was the hair, the look, the Public Enemy shirt, all of it. I was just like, yes. Oh, it's me. It's not me. It's what I wanted to. It's riding around on a dirt bike and going to arcades and oh yeah, this is This is
from a marketing and audience appeal perspective. I think you're right. I think Cameron made the right call. Just as far as the way the movie's edge, I kind of don't give a shit about John Connor, which is not the right attitude for the movie. But like, I'm much more interested in Sarah's journey. I think Miles Dyson, I think is a really interesting character.
But if you're an 8-year-old boy in Kansas in 1991, it seems almost plausible that, by the time I'm 10, I will have my own motorbike and be hacking into ATMs. Like,
yeah.
But that's some magic of timing that you can't really design into your movie.
Well, I mean, I think he did, in the sense that this is a film for 13-year-old boys,
right.
or 8 to 13, I guess, is like the target audience of this, which we happen to fall into, and it sort of rewrote the brains of everyone who was one of those at the right time. That this became such an important film for a generation, and it's because it kind of takes the stuff you were just getting out of, Saturday morning cartoon fare, into an R-rated adult place. And hey, there you are, right in the center of it. It's genius, absolute genius.
I agree. I mean, I think from an audience appeal, I think Cameron did the exact right thing. I totally get it. I feel like both structurally and narratively, I'm least interested in John Connor. And I know that that's weird. It may be a weird thing to say with this series, but I
think the series has always struggled with what to do, how to bring John Connor front and center.
Yeah,
because he was an idea in the first one, and such a central idea that you do have to continue to keep him around. And this is maybe the only time that having him this close to the center has worked. I don't know. I haven't seen a lot of the later ones.
It doesn't work. Yeah. And I do think there's also an element of just another reason everyone gravitates to this guy when you're the right age, is that he is the most important person in the world, which is how you feel when you're this age. That you are so self-obsessed when you're a 12-year-old that it's impossible not to be in some ways. And in this case, it's like he's right to be. It's because he's the the one who's going to save the world from the machines. Of course, it's perfect. And again, and I don't want to push back on the line readings too. I love his cracking voice. I think he nails some hilarious line readings in this that are now iconic. Did he just call moi a dipshit?
That one's fun. It's just some of the screaming when the voice is really cracking. A couple of these could have been toned down.
I'm just a grumpy old fuck at this point. Like that just irritates me. I'm like, the lines like, "Oh, this is intense," or "This is deep." I'm like, no, this is not working. We need to.
But again, if he's 12. Trying to sound cool, I can sort of buy this.
Yeah.
And, if you're right, the perfect, so my theory of movies, and especially kids' movies, I guess, is probably entirely foreign by my experience with Terminator 2, which is that the way to make a bad kids' movie is to have adults, say, if I want to make a movie for 10-year-olds, the worst thing I can do is try and write a movie about 10-year-olds that, captures how 10-year-olds actually talk or want to talk. The best thing I could do to make a movie to appeal to 10-year-olds is make a movie about 13-year-olds.
That's smart. Yeah.
And that'll gives me a lot of leeway with the 10-year-olds will be looking like, because there's still that thing of in 2 years I might have my own motorbike. Whereas if I'm actually that age, I know, well, I don't have a fucking motorbike and I don't have any prospects for acquiring one on the immediate horizon. But 2 years to 3 years, when you're a kid, that's a long horizon. Anything could happen. 2 years from now, I could be the savior of humanity. 2 years from now,
the other key, I think, is that John Connor is not the badass in this. I think that helps.
Yes.
I think he is, he is allowed to hang out with a badass, like he has purpose to be Arnold Schwarzenegger's best friend, or, that's his father figure. I mean, it's the short round thing, we don't necessarily want to, as children, be told that we are the best, because we know we're not deep down. Yeah. But that we are worthy of hanging out with the best. There you go. Yeah.
Wow. Well, I get it. So, 8-year-old Al really identified and really loved John Connor. 21-year-old Michael was much more interested in Sarah Connor for many reasons.
Sure. Let's and we'll get to Dyson at some point too. But right now, that's the other thing. Okay, so Sarah Connor in this movie is locked up in an insane asylum because she got arrested trying to blow up Cyberdyne systems to stop the rise of the machines. And that's how John Connor got put in the foster system, where we find him at the beginning of this movie. And eventually, once the Terminator fills John in on what's going on, he makes the Terminator go do a rescue mission to pull her out of there. And we get that fantastic sequence of the Sarah busting herself out, and then they arrive to help bust her out as the T-1000 is also arriving and doing all sorts of cool morphing effects and chase shots. Great sequence, but just also the conceit of Sarah Connor in this movie, that she is now this hardened, anti-technology commando, and has raised John to be a guerrilla military leader. I mean, she is a, first of all, incredible physical transformation by Linda Hamilton from the first movie. It's weird. This movie is, like I said, set 10 years later, but it's only like 7 years later it was made. But it just feels like she has been through 20 years of growth and mileage. It sounds like I'm just saying she looks bad and old, but I just mean like she grows the character so much from one movie to the next, even though it's not that big of a time gap.
She doesn't look bad, that's for sure. No. I mean, everyone in this is in incredible physical shape.
The prison sequence, is there a more satisfying beatdown of a prison trustee than we get in this movie?
Of a prison trustee? I don't think
so. Well, he's an asylum. He's a
guard.
He's a guard, but I mean,
I'm sure his job title is nurse or whatever. But.
Right, I mean, that's one of the most satisfying, in prison, guard beatdowns I think in the history of cinema that she gives him. So,
well, does Kill Bill compare?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's the same thing basically. It is actually Tarantino doing James Cameron stuff in that sequence in Kill Bill. Yeah, I would say.
Well, it is such an incredible economy of establishing this as, okay, this is a guard and he's a creep, and so it's okay for us to feel good when she beats him down with a broom handle. But the way you do that is he licks her cheek. He has like no lines, but we all remember that guy.
We know.
Very much. And he doesn't need a full monologue that like Buck from Kill Bill gets, but it's just all it's done with amazing economy there. So, I mean, this is the thing that we sort of mentioned this, I think, in the first Terminator episode, like how this plays differently now. With in 2022 with our sort of relationship with conspiracy theories is so different.
Yes.
And the whole idea that, I mean, it's weird how this movie plays with 2022 politics in the way that like, oh yeah, the cop's a bastard, and that's a thing that has proved kind of prescient. And then also, but also our hero is a survivalist conspiracy theorist that wants to like assassinate people to prevent this end of the world conspiracy.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, this is all so much more innocent in 1991, oddly enough. That doesn't speak particularly well of the time. And the nuclear stuff is, hey, we're back there too a little bit too. It's all kind of coming back.
I was going to say, I think it speaks poorly of our time that the threat of like nuclear warheads seem like an innocent threat.
Yeah.
Well, we're coming back to it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why we can't get there, but just that I don't know.
Yeah, no, I mean,
if we could blame it on the machines, it would be kind of nice,
I mean, that is something that feels of the time. It feels like this is this is a film birthed out of Cameron growing up during decades of nuclear scares.
It was very much of the time. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it really was.
I remember this being such a big thing in the 80s as a kid. They were teaching us duck and cover in schools. They actually were doing that in the 1980s. And so it was still very much, a generational thing.
I mean, I was part of the generation, that we were early teens when the movie The Day After aired for the first time, and that was all about a nuclear strike on American soil from the Soviets, and it was, I mean, fucking terrifying, and that it was putting out there what we all were afraid of, and so kind of culminating in this. And I don't know if and if you guys that Cameron like insisted on spending so much money on the sequence, the nuclear blast stream. He wanted it so real that it ended up being used as reference material by basically the government military organizations. Like, he did such a good job of it for a long time during the 90s. They grabbed that footage and said, this is what it would look like.
I remember my mother reached across the seat in the theater and covered my eyes during the nuclear Armageddon dream. So it had an effect on her.
I mean, it's horrifying, and he did a really good job with it.
It's the most R-rated thing in the movie, for sure.
It is.
Yeah,
it is.
That's the moment where, with that, or maybe Xander Berkeley getting the knife through the throat.
I was saying,
but it's the one that sticks with me, I think, and that actually, like, you watch it now and you're just like, oh, that's pretty incredible stuff. I love that she basically describes it exactly in that monologue in the asylum early on. Down to like, the skin turns into burnt paper, all that stuff. And then they just literally show it an hour later in the film. It's fantastic. And yeah, that puppet, the Sarah Connor puppet on the fence.
Oh yeah.
Into a skeleton. God.
It's
It's the best nuclear explosion on film, for sure. Right. Like, the most effective, the one that achieves what it's going for most. I don't even think there's competition, really.
Yeah, I don't know how to really like rank those. I mean, honestly, the next best like nuclear blast sort of like sequence I can think of would be in Rogue One, where it's not even really a nuclear blast, but you know what I mean. It's great stuff. There are like 2 bits in this movie of like effects work that strike me as goofy, and that is an incredible achievement for a movie with as much like, even though there's only 42 shots, there's a lot of action work here. And maybe there's 1 or 2 spots where you can spot the Arnold, stunt double on the motorcycle or whatever.
Sure.
But the times when it's actually humorous is when the T-1000 is hanging off the back of the car as they're escaping the asylum. And it's just like clearly a dummy at this point. It just lost all physicality as just, ragdoll behind there. Even then, they kind of like make the effort to put some like sparks on the ground to establish that, it's still made of metal. So I appreciate that. And that's charming. I love it. The only other good part is during that nuclear blast sequence, it starts out with this, blinding flash of light. And then there's the sort of like the slow, slowish path of the shockwave going through. And you see it take the top off of a bus that apparently just was continuing to drive on its route after that. Blinding flash of light that just vaporized downtown.
I mean, it's kind of like all the tornado videos you see. You see this huge tornado and cars just going back and forth. So people are just saying, "Oh well, nuclear blast. I still got to get downtown. Let's go."
Yeah,
commentary on the complacency of our society, Al.
Or maybe it's like what was the bus wasn't driving rapidly, but like maybe that bus had already done a U-turn and was trying to drive away from the giant flash of light, and it doesn't look like it's going that fast because it's a bus and a model. But for some reason in my head, it's always just that driver like is just not listening to the passengers. Like, no, I don't know what it is, but I know that I'm 8 minutes behind on my route.
I got to be there at 2:42 p.m. That's how I'm supposed to. Yeah, right.
Anywho, we're all right. So now
Sarah Connor, she's great.
Sarah Connor, yeah. I love her escape. That
it's great stuff.
I feel like there's the bad way of doing this stuff that is so obvious. That let's take a shot at The Force Awakens here, where the third act of that movie has got some of our heroes trying to rescue the Rey, the heroine, from the clutches of the evil villains, and they find that in the meantime she has freed herself and is escaping on her own with no help, which kind of renders all of their efforts pointless. And they're taken aback, like, "What? You're a gaga girl? Did this?" And this one, because it's not the climax of the movie, probably helps, but it's just great that it's doing the same thing that Sarah Connor's in the process. She's heard that the Terminator is back. The authorities tried to get information from her about the Terminator, including some great sort of like callback references to the first film. But so she has to like try and spring an escape, and she's getting pretty far on her own, and just like, you know, the way it's so memorable, her like methods. You know, in addition to being the guy down with the broom handle, she fills the hypodermic needle with like Drano and puts it in Dr. Silverman's neck as a threat. Like she doesn't have a gun to put to his head.
The visceral nature of that, like that is something that is just sort of haunting. And, you know, and the fun, and our sympathies are obviously with Sarah and not Dr. Silberman. But man, is it upsetting to see the needle point, like just digging into his old neck folds in that scene. It's just, it gives me a chill watching that even now.
And then you know, she gets in the standoff with the security guards while she's got him there, you know, this broken arm and the needle in his neck. And, you know, the way she was able to break that is you know, it's a great way of like balancing, you know, our sympathies, like you're saying, because it's very easy for this characterization, which is that she's pretty crazy, even if we know she's ultimately right. And she's doing this sort of grotesque stuff there. Like you said, we could be tipping over into not liking her at this point, but they have this great way of, you know, Silverman saying like, no, I don't believe you, Sarah. Like, I know you and you're not a murderer. Like, what, I think you're crazy, but you're not a murderer. And she reminds us sort of with exposition that, you know, like 2 years, you're all dead already. You know, I believe it.
So good.
So don't push me. And it's not that she's not trying to, it established her as being smart and still kind of sympathetic. I mean, she doesn't have to kill anybody, and she's using her smarts to make sure she doesn't have to kill anybody by establishing, like, not saying, you know, it's true, or trying to convince him, just, you know, I believe it. And that's the only thing that matters in this situation here. And just great stuff. Love it.
Yeah. A terrifically written character, because it is an equal measure, like, smart and crazy and extreme. The performance it's the exact right kind of broad. I mean, just the righteously pissed off growl, like every line gets, like, you know, the pack-a-day voice, you know, smoking. It's amazing, and the transformation is a big part of that, of course. But I mean, it's just good as written too. I love that this character is so off the wire, off the rails. It nuts. You know, like that she just decides, I think I'm just going to go kill Miles Dyson now. You know, stuff like that she just does. Or that monologue about, in an insane world, it was the sanest choice. Won't beat him. You know, all that stuff. It's great. It's characterization, and it's consistent. Well, yeah, I mean, somebody who's gone through what she has gone through, but it is still very understandable and relatable. And it's not written like just a generic strong female protagonist. That's why his are so good. None of them are written that way, and that's why he's got.
Well, she's got a great arc in this. I mean, she's got this arc which parallels the T-800, which is they both basically become more human. She actually progresses towards being an actual Terminator, and then she has her breaking moment, and then her journey is back to motherhood, back to humanity, which again parallels Arnold's as the T-800, where he becomes progressively more and more human by learning. So it's just this great arc for Sarah. I really love that. I think it's one of my issues with the structure of the film, where because that the first third or the middle, not the middle, but that part where we're really all John's point of view, for me, again, it takes away from it. I don't want to relitigate all this again. I like her arc so much, and I really like her character so much that I really like that. I was just say that whole sequence of the escape, which I love. I mean, this film has got so many bravura, just action sequences. Mm-hmm. There's a couple little moments which I love when she first beats that orderly. She's got almost this little skip to her step as she's going down the hall. It's so great.
She hops down the hallway. That for some reason that physicality has stuck with me for decades.
Oh yeah. It's fantastic.
Mm-hmm. She's sort of like fast skipping in her bare feet to, like, you know, be quiet, but move down the hall. It's just.
I mean, it's clear she's doing it, you know, for self, but there's also like almost like this little bit of joy about it. So like it's really fun. And then I really love the moment, which is a callback to the first film, which of course is when she falls on the ground. The T-1000 is approaching, and her son gets there, and then Arnold puts his in, says, "Come with me when to live," which of course. Which is what Kyle said to her, what Kyle Reese says to her in the first film. And I didn't remember that when I first saw the movie, but now of course I do. And it was such to me, that's again, Cameron doing the same thing in Aliens, which is he's repurposing these beats or moments where it's not just a regurgitation, it's a reframing of in a way that really has emotional resonance. If not for the audience, at least for the characters. And I thought that was such a really neat little moment to stick in there where he wasn't just saying something, it wasn't just like it wasn't this, something to be waiting to be memed if they had memes back then. There was real meaning because she had to, her whole world was being turned on its edge because the entity that she was, she assumed was going to come kill her is now trying to save her. And she's like, what the fuck? And it was just a really great little moment with the one line.
Now, is that line, stay here if you, or no, not that line.
Come with me if you want to live.
Is that in every Terminator film and never again used well, I think?
I don't know.
I might be wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure it's definitely in a couple of them, if not all.
I don't have the knowledge to answer that, but I still feel confident saying yes, you're right about that.
Yeah, I mean, it just becomes, it's the failure to recontextualize.
Yes.
I mean, there's a larger thing to be spoken of within this franchise of like, how does this film work and the rest completely fail? Like after this, this shouldn't work. It's a remake of the first one in so many ways. And yet it 100% works. It improves on it. I think a recontextualization of all that information is key to that. And they just are completely unable to do that again in any meaningful way afterwards. I mean, we'll get back to that at the end, I guess. But yeah.
Well, I think there's a couple of things you guys touched on there. In terms of recontextualizing things, like seeing this as a child before I had seen the first Terminator.
Right.
One thing I think it's great about is
that's most people. At no point, I think most people see this first.
I mean, I don't know if most people do or not, but the sign that it does what Michael was talking about successfully is that at no point was I sitting there in the theater as a kid and being like, I don't understand that line, or I don't understand, or thinking like that must be something from the first one. Right. That if like I recognize the cadence of a reference here, but no, those lines all make sense in context, even when they're repurposed from the first one. And that's, and including like the entire characterization of Sarah Connor is recontextualizing things in the first movie, that she's become sort of the crazy-eyed Kyle Reese protector figure here. Yeah. There's also a sense that she's, by at least the halfway point, she's become the Terminator that is going off to on assassination missions with this when she shows up at the Dyson house, because at that point the Arnold Terminator has had the parental locks put on already by John Connor, and she's the more dangerous Terminator at that point. Yeah. But of course, yeah, just, I mean, like I said, the whole characterization is great. Sort of like John was saying earlier, that the way this movie is comfortable with letting that characterization be that, yeah, she's ultimately right about all this Judgment Day stuff, but also she is genuinely kind of crazy now. Like,
it's cool. It's so cool.
Yeah. And I'm just going to say, no, John, we all didn't see Terminator 2 first. Some of us saw it in the proper order. And in fact, I'm lodging a complaint of ageism against the Podcasters Guild. So you'll be hearing from them, just so you know. I also, as a parent, made sure my daughter saw the first one first and then saw the second one. I did my job. I made sure things were seen in the proper order. Same thing for the Alien franchise. My kids see the movie in the way they're supposed to be seen.
Fair enough. I mean,
so she hasn't seen the later entries in the Alien and Terminator franchises?
I don't think so. I think she likes both the first two films in both, but I think she has any interest in anything else beyond.
No, so it is the way they're supposed to be seen.
Yes, I think you got to watch those before you watch Alien and Aliens, so you get the full backstory of Ridley Scott's vision. Continuity wise, that comes first. Prometheus, yeah. So.
Well, and then the Alien versus Predator movies take place in between them.
Well, I guess Prey would then be first if you were to have to go through them all, because that would be
there you go. Okay. It is part of a grand cinematic tapestry.
Since you guys, I think there's an interesting discussion to be had, since you guys saw it really young and probably were not really keyed into the marketing and you hadn't seen the first film.
One of the things that into the marketing.
Okay, I wasn't sure. I mean, one of the things that has long bothered me about the movie, and it's really not the movie's fault, it was really the marketing, because the marketing completely spoiled
absolutely.
Yeah. That Schwarzenegger was a good guy. And the thing is, I mean, the film clearly treats you as if you don't know that. And for the most part,
40 minutes.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I would say I do think that the opening sequence at the bar kind of gives it away because he doesn't kill anybody. So there is kind of, and I again, I'm going to put my grumpy hat on. I'm not a big fan of the bad of the bone use. That's just me. But
yeah. Okay. I guess I have two notes about this movie. That's just that particular needle drop.
Yeah, that I feel like that really tips its hand in a way that the scene when John encounters them for the first time, that scene is sucked of any kind of tension because we already know what's going on, and so we don't share John's confusion or his terror because we know Schwarzenegger's there to save the day, and we as an audience know it's, hey, we're only 30 minutes in this film, he's not going to die right now, and so I think that there's some kind of fuck ups there, both with marketing and structurally that they did.
I mean, maybe, but no one left unsatisfied because of that.
And I agree with that. I know I'm going to be the outlier here with this stuff, but I mean, I love the movie, and I think especially just action wise, it's just an incredible action movie. These are just things I've noticed, and I really think that it's just interesting to me that the film treats the identity of both Terminators as unknown when we clearly know it, and it makes that, I think it makes that sequence, at least emotionally, a little less effective. It's a great action sequence. The whole escape from the mall and the chase down the spillway is fantastically done, but it doesn't hold a lot of tension.
I just think the effects work in the monster design of the T-1000 there does so much for me that I was still just like, yeah, probably aware even as a child. Okay, but the hero of this movie is not going to die 30 minutes into it. But it was just so much like, holy shit, what is going on with this like liquid metal monstrosity and everything, like just trying to catch my breath. That, I mean, totally worked on me then. And it's still a great action sequence now, just a great chase.
And amazing. Amazing.
That they're still like recreating that LA River chase in Grand Theft Auto games,
I think if you could see the movie blind with no knowledge of what the plot is and you see no marketing, I think it works much better. And again, I know this is not a really fair complaint against the movie itself, but it was one of those things that it was totally spoiled by the trailers that aired on TV back in the day, and it was really frustrating because I felt like that moment could have been a lot more effective if you didn't know that going in.
I do think this would be a very hard movie to market without spoiling the because
that's true.
How do you, anything that shows sort of like John interacting with the Terminator on friendly terms kind of gives that away. And if you can't touch any of that stuff, it becomes a little more difficult. There's also maybe just something that it becomes, I mean, I guess if you're watching the movie without having seen any of that, it seems like there's two Terminators after him, maybe for the first part of the movie. Or I don't know. Maybe you think that Robert Patrick's the good guy. It's hard for me to get in that headspace.
I think that's what you would have to do. Yeah.
I mean, I feel like the film is seems to be trying to do that because again, he's a cop, and so it's playing. I mean, Cameron has even said, he was deliberately playing on the idea of an authority figure. I think, I think the idea, but I think unfortunately, two things work against it, which is, I think Robert Patrick is so good that he's just creepy. He's just creepy as fuck, regardless. So like, I don't think you ever believe like he's a good guy. Like you don't ever see him and go, oh, he's going to look out for John. Like that never happens. But I do think that there is a little bit of that tension intended, but we dispense with it pretty quickly. So.
And he still seems, the performance is very mechanical. Like,
yes.
It screams that to me right from the jump, but I've never not known that about him before I started watching this movie.
Yeah, you see him morphing in the trailer for sure. You do.
Yeah. But even just the way he talks to the foster parents, he's very cool.
It's a fine looking boy.
Yeah, and his face is so polished.
It's very it's totally insincere. I mean, it's like very
Mm-hmm. I mean, the great thing he finds out about Arnold from the foster parents, and he's like, "No, I wouldn't worry about him." Great little moment.
And I mean, the great thing about the T-1000 too that we did mention earlier was that it does make good on sort of the idea of the Terminator as an infiltration unit. That kind of it's great. The great thing about Arnold's casting in the first one is that he doesn't function in that way at all, and it comes across as this is it's like currently when we have our AI make drawings for us, and they're always just a bit off of how a human would interpret the prompt. And it's kind of great for that. And then this one, he actually can go anywhere and get in anywhere and pass. And that's part of what makes him a terrifying, in addition to being an unstoppable physical threat.
Yeah. Great character.
Yeah. So now, we're moving along here. I guess we haven't talked about Dyson yet. And, so the thing is, after they've all escaped, Sarah Connor goes rogue to try and kill Miles Dyson, the creator of the, machine system that will eventually create all the Terminators. Played by Joe Morton. Just Miles Dyson, I think, one of the most effective supporting characters and performances in history on, like, if you're doing some sort of movie analytics, like his usage off the bench in this is just amazing. He's really only in this movie for like 4 scenes maybe, and leaves such an impression.
I mean, I'm tempted to say, like, it's crazy he doesn't show up for that this is a major crucial character and he doesn't even show up for over an hour into the film, but he does. I always forget that he's there at the beginning.
Yeah,
walking us through
hardly counts.
Yeah, doesn't count though, really. Like, it's all of a sudden that this character shows up and carries, in a lot of ways, the emotional human weight of the film.
Mm-hmm.
Like, these other characters are like gods. These are characters burdened with destiny and future and sort of, somewhat half of them are machines. And he kind of comes across as the person, the human being in the midst of all this.
See, John, you're making my argument for me. You're making my argument why this movie should have been about Miles Dyson in the first place. You're doing it just for me right now. You just did it beautifully.
But when you're a kid, you think you're a guy.
I know. It's a testament to Joe Morton. I mean, I am not to take away from Cameron's direction or the people around him, but Joe Morton, he just should have been huge, I think, because he does, like you said, he's in 4 or 5 scenes. He does so much with the role. One of the most, I think, not upsetting in the sense of like squicky, but one of the most
it was upsetting.
Well, but I would say one of the most moving deaths.
Yeah.
In like any action film anywhere, because you don't expect that. There's just this little moment. He just, oh my God, it's horrifying. It's moving.
It was, I mean, especially when you're 8 years old, but even now it is really like bracingly real.
Yeah.
In how that death scene plays out. Just, the way he pants so iconically. It's incredible. But you're right. Like, it's just, I think you don't see a person die like this on screen, or dying this way in Commando or True Lies or whatever we're going to get to next. That it makes such an impression, and he represents the sort of human cost of all of this, giant action extravaganza. You say the other characters are gods. Really, his position in this mythology is just as godlike as anybody's. He's almost a Promethean figure of some sort. But
it's true. Yeah, he's another card in the tarot. Really, he's the scholar. He could just be that, but Joe Morton breathes this humanity into him. And I don't know, seeing him, die that way, and seeing his family and seeing everyone crying and screaming, and him, like the other characters don't behave like that. There's messy humanity all over with him. So it's both worlds, though. I think you're right. He is sort of that figure, I guess, in the mythology. That's crazy. This is the performance that should have been nominated for an Oscar.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, you could make the argument for Hamilton or Patrick too, I think, but this is the best performance in the movie, oddly enough.
Yeah, I haven't gone back to look at the 1991 Oscar slate, but I feel comfortable saying that Patrick, Hamilton, and Morton all were as good as anybody who was nominated that year.
Yeah, certainly. Like, just in the way it's turned out, I would have to imagine. What was that year? That was a good year. I believe that was Silence of the Lambs and JFK.
You guys knew who was first offered the part of Dyson?
No, who?
Denzel Washington.
Oh, that makes sense. Okay.
And he turned it down because he basically said, all I get to do is sweat and look afraid. So no, I'm not going to take it.
Well, in a sense, he's not right for it though, because he's too big a deal.
Well, yeah, at that point, because he just won an Oscar like a year or two before for Glory, so he really was on the rise at that point. So
he wasn't quite Denzel Washington at that point, for sure.
Yeah, he was getting there. But Yeah.
I don't know if he can sell the nerd aspect of it.
I don't know if he can either.
I mean, I'm not. It's a fool who bets against Denzel in his prime about anything. But I mean, he's not going to be any better than Joe Morton is in this. He's perfect, absolutely perfect.
He is perfect.
And like I said, he's the best type of supporting character where you feel like, man, maybe the whole movie should be about him. And I do think that part of Cameron's genius here, and why you couldn't make this movie with Sarah at the center again, is the reconfiguring stuff we've also been talking about. That if you do another Terminator with Sarah Connor at the center of it, then it becomes a lot more apparent how much we are recycling beats and structure here. And having the focus shift to John and to a younger protagonist who's more vulnerable allows Sarah to be more of the badass. But also, weirdly, it allows the character to be more badass in the action sequences and all that, while also in the meta game of it, making it feel like more vulnerable. Like this movie could very plausibly end with Sarah Connor dying and John Connor living,
It's almost surprising it doesn't. I mean, I guess she is doing voiceover, but all the same.
You could do voiceover from a dead character. That's
you can.
That'd be fine. But I think, she's sort of saved from needing to die by Miles Dyson being such an effective supporting character / sacrificial lamb to give the proceedings some weight. That death scene does so much lifting. And then, we got the, sort of old Yeller goodbye of the Terminator at the end.
I wrote old Yeller in my notes about that too.
Yeah. But I just don't think that would be enough without the Dyson death to make this feel like it had any weight to it. On top of that, you got the great usage of the kid character you said, where they don't really have him like firing guns ever. They establish his little hacker skills, which even has a believable context to it. That his mother was training him to fight against machines, right from birth. So
you have to know the machines, to fight.
Right.
Them, so.
He gets to put that to use. He gets to put that to use to help the big mission to Cyberdyne, but he is not. He's not fighting off the Terminators himself at any point.
Right. That little point about the hacking. Watching this, I was reminded, even though structurally, I think this might be to some degree Cameron's jankiest movie. It's not very janky. I mean, I'm saying comparatively because he doesn't do janky. One of the things I really love about Cameron, and I think it just gets better and better, is that I think he rightly gets criticized for some really hokey dialogue. He's not always great with performances. He sometimes gives really good performances, despite his material. But structurally, I'm hard pressed to think of another director-writer who is so good at two things. First off, keeping things tight, and just we were talking about the special effects, but just how everything in the movie serves a purpose. Like there's nothing extraneous. There's no. In the theatrical version, there's nothing in here that's just in there because there's no indulgences. But it's. I mean, I really don't. I mean, I don't not to the degree that we see now, and not to the degree we see a lot of other directors.
Sure. I mean,
and I think he's so good at setup and payoff. I mean, it's one of the reasons I still really like Titanic, even though I think there's a lot to criticize about it. There's a lot overexposure thing. But I mean, I look at Titanic, I look at Terminator 2 and his other films that he writes, and it's like he's so good at that. It's like he has such a great handle on. I think it's easy to criticize to say, well, gosh, I wonder if John's hacking skills will come up later. I'm like, no, that's good screenwriting. It's like that's just really good, tight things serve a purpose, and I'm always really in awe of his ability just to do that. I mean, I'll compare it to Nolan a little bit because Nolan gets called very clockwork a lot, but I feel like Cameron's better because I feel like Cameron usually has a better handle on character, and B, it feels less not contrived, but it feels less artificial or less just not. I don't know.
There's an academic bent to Nolan, where
and I love Nolan, but
it feels like he's trying to see if he can make these ideas pan out,
right?
And he always can, but in a way where you kind of like go, yes, I see, and rub your chin a little bit and go, yeah, I see what you did there. That's very clever. Cameron is a much more visceral filmmaker, where it's perhaps to your point there, not necessarily that less intricate. in terms of the setups and payoffs that are they're there, but they feel much more organic.
Yeah.
Like the hacking skill stuff, that it doesn't feel like that's just a plant for the third act, because it's introduced as like filling in backstory and character building. It's establishing where Sarah Connor is and his mom, when he's explaining to his friend, like, yeah, my mom taught me to do this shit before she got locked up, and now she's at the funny farm over there and wherever.
There's a real cleanness to his film structure, which I really admire and really like. So
it feels like it has a purpose in that moment, other than planting a flag for the future.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, his impulses are mainstream, and his ideas are big and easily kind of grasped, and he's great at communicating that stuff in a way that everyone kind of picks up on and gets the endorphin rush of being like, yeah, right, because he's a hacker, because he can, like, he's as good as anyone has ever been at that. Well, Spielberg's pretty good at it too, but it's masterclass. It's that kind of stuff. There's a cleanness to his films, a mass appeal quality, I guess you would say. I don't know if I guess this is me kind of tiptoeing up to the line of being like saying something critical here. A simplicity, maybe.
Sure.
I think it's an open question for me sometimes whether I prefer this or the original, and I think ultimately, having recently watched them both, I prefer this one, the T2. But I like the messiness of the first one.
I like the first one, but I think the first one is actually a better film. I actually like it better.
It's arguable, yeah,
yeah,
and I understand that. This is kind of the point, I guess, where Cameron goes full mainstream auteur, king of the world. And his films will be for humongous audiences forever going forward. I mean, I guess True Lies doesn't quite fall into that category, but it kind of does. There will be huge, gigantic movies.
I think if you put yourself in the mindset of 1994, it is trying to appeal to everybody in a lunkheaded way of the time.
And I think you're onto something too, John, because we got to remember that this came hard on the heels after The Abyss, which was which was not a financial success. It wasn't even a critical success at the time.
Too. It's super personal. Yeah.
So I think we're seeing course correction on Cameron's part. I think he knew it both from a career wise. He needed to do that, but I think we're also seeing him move away from something that is more personal, idiosyncratic, to what you just said. This is very mainstream. It's very clean. It's very, and that's not it's not always a good or bad thing. In this case, I think it's a good thing. It can be bad.
No one does this better.
Right.
Spielberg does it on his level, but like that, and
not for lack of trying. There's plenty of people trying. Right. I think you're right that this is sort of him also stepping out of maybe the quote unquote franchise ghetto of like horror of the original Terminator.
Yeah,
I believe the VHS was on some horror shelves in the video store in my youth until this movie came out, and I think they moved the whole series over to action at that point.
Yeah,
and this is in a way that the Abyss has some light horror elements, but it's also not a full-blown popcorn blockbuster like this. It's not.
No, it's not.
It's not an action extravaganza.
I mean, he's trying stuff out. He has those instincts. Right. Aliens is a horror movie that is for as big an audience as possible, but this is where he really figures the algorithm out.
Back to what we were saying. I think if you can accuse any Cameron film of doing indulgences, it would be The Abyss, and I say that as somebody who loves the movie. That to me strikes me as a movie. There's more indulgences as far as him as a filmmaker versus everything past it.
I do think he's an indulgent filmmaker.
I think more in terms of plotting, in terms of what he spends time on in the actual film. I'm not talking about effects or settings or things like that. I'm talking about what actually happens, who we spend time with, how much we spend time with something. I don't know. I don't think The Abyss is an overly indulgent film, not compared to other filmmakers, but
it's clearly the one where he's amusing himself,
right?
To the largest degree.
Yes, because that's a good way of putting it. Yeah,
the idea of a whole movie taking place on the ocean floor is something that is, for a filmmaker that has otherwise pretty unerring populist instincts,
right?
It is something that is clearly more appealing to him than it is to mainstream audiences,
right?
As it turned out, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, like a comparison to me is Jackson's King Kong, which to me feels really fucking indulgent. I mean, that movie should never been 3 hours long.
The most indulgent film, maybe. Yes,
right. I mean, that's what I'm saying is that that's Cameron doesn't do that kind of indulgence. That's what I was kind of talking about. So,
well, I mean,
Avatar is probably right up there with
yeah, but I mean, I think
3 hours and 10 minutes for the second out of 5 Avatar.
Well, I had to confess, I've only seen Avatar twice. I saw it once during the original theatrical run, and I wanted to watch with my kids like 10 years ago. So I haven't seen it in a long time. So,
but you can mean a couple different things by indulgent. I mean, in terms of runtime, I suppose. Cameron hasn't made an under 2 hour movie since the original Terminator.
That's true,
and never will again. We know this. Now, there are some there's an area I guess you could call indulgent in this movie, but I want to praise it for, which is that for all the PG-13ing of the Arnold Terminator and sort of contrivances of him not actually killing anybody, man, Cameron compensates by letting us really let loose and enjoy just the weaponry porn of he's not just going to show you that minigun. Like Arnold's really going to put that minigun to use in a way that didn't even in Predator.
The minigun is like the 5th main character in this film. It's it has its...
Well, is fourth billing go to the grenade launcher then? Because man, that thing gets a lot of playing time.
Point. Yeah, I think it goes. I believe it's Schwarzenegger, Hamilton, Edward Furlong, Robert Patrick, minigun, Miles Dyson, and
introducing the rotating grenade launcher. Even the stuff that's so much fun. He uses the tear gas firing gun to just shoots a guy in the back and sends him flying. Oh, I love it.
All his workarounds for not killing people are wonderful.
I will say whatever kind of issues I now have at this point of having so much distance from the movie and seen it so many times, once we get to Cyberdyne, I mean, the movie A never stops, and B is just a nearly flawless action film. It's so, I mean, you can't, if you turn the movie on at that point, you're not turning it off. Like you can't, because it's so good. It's just so good.
The action in this. Here's a question: what's the best action scene in this movie? Is
it? I had 2 questions I wanted to ask you guys before we finish. This is one of them.
Is it LA
actually,
River?
let's make this. Yeah. Let's make this the very end piece, though. Actually, first I ask you: do you guys have a? I think Michael sort of answered this. He put me on to this. Is there a small performance beat, or something that sticks with you here?
Oh, sure.
Because there's something that sticks with me. I don't know if this even counts as performance. I mean, sure, you could talk about the way Robert Patrick runs is incredible.
Yeah.
But the thing that sells the T-1000 effects almost so much, and it's not even one of those effect shots that we're talking about, but it's during that asylum escape scene where he morphs right through the bars, and then he gets the gun stuck between them and has to adjust it to get it through the bars. And you're so blown away by oh my God, the effects of going through the bars and the terror of that. But it just sort of reestablishes for you the rules of this thing real quick. That he can move around, but he has to get that the gun is not him. He has to still has to find guns to use, and they have to, follow the rules of physics.
That performance character, however you want to define it, is full of things like that. They figured the way this thing works out so well. The one that always sticks with me is the noise he makes when he falls off the back of the car with the prong hands and just rolls, and it's ding, 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 ding.
Yeah. That's wonderful.
Yeah, and it's every scene with him has that. It's incredible. I love that when he's in the mall, when he's chasing John at the arcade, and he's the shot frames him standing next to a. I believe he leaves the frame, and there's the shot is of a silver featureless mannequin. Before we've seen him morph, the little bits like that. It's so well thought out. It's so good.
Well, I mean, it's just the look he gives the mannequin is really interesting too. It's just is he angry? Is he annoyed? Does he feel kinship? What's going on there? So I think that's good. That's. I was thinking too. I love, and this isn't really a character beat so much. I really love the little scene after he's fallen off the car and just moves his foot over a little bit so that last little piece of liquid metal can get up with him. So,
great.
But the best,
a perfect character. It's so good. It's
best action sequence. God, that's
right. I mean, how do you define it? Is the LA River thing? Of course.
There's 4 basic sequences. Mm-hmm. There's one, the shootout in the mall, hallways that then goes into the chase through the LA River. That is just fantastic stuff.
And then that shot of the motorcycle coming off the concrete abutment on. Oh God, there's so many shots in that. Yes, obviously.
Then there's the escape from the asylum,
mm-hmm.
And then there is the Cyberdyne attack, and finally, like the freeway chase when they're leaving Cyberdyne that goes into the finale in the
steel factory,
steel smelting factory.
Yeah, you got to count those as three separate, I think, even though they flow one to the next.
Oh, okay. Well, those are all three.
Because otherwise, it wins. Otherwise, it has. It's the last 45 minutes, and
I don't know why I was putting the car chase and the factory together, but that's there's no reason to do it that way, I suppose.
I would probably vote for this attack on Cyberdyne, and I think
interesting.
I think for a few reasons. First off, it's the culmination of, to some degree, up until the very end of I know why will you cry. But I think it's a kind of culmination of the T-800's humanity, where he's able to take care of John but not kill anybody. And it's still just this fucking great action film. He blows the shit out of everything around him. You get the great sequence with the T-1000 jumping the motorcycle into the helicopter. You get Dyson's death, which is really moving. You get all this stuff all packed up into one great package. And they actually, and again, it seems a little quaint looking back from 2022, but it's great because other than the really obvious digital effects of the T-1000, they did all that shit. They literally built a third floor onto that building just to blow it up. Like everything that blew up, they blew up. And it's really good. I really love the factory sequence, but to me, it's not quite there for me as the Cyberdyne.
Well, the river motorcycle chase is the one I think that's got the most. They actually did that going for it. All the vehicle stuff there is practical. I mean, this the attack on Cyberdyne. It's got, like you said, the Dyson death gives it an emotional wallop that the other action sequences don't have, and it is where we get to see all of our heroes for like the only time in the movie all working, rowing in the same direction and working together. And so that's kind of satisfying. However, I cannot cast a vote for that because it is the big action sequence that lacks the T-1000 as part of it.
Same. Same.
Technically not really, but that's okay.
Yeah, he shows up at the end. He shows up at the end. And it's got the helicopter. It's cool.
Yeah.
But the thing is, it's so hard. These are some of the best action scenes ever committed to film.
They are.
You know what I love in these? Stunts. There's a lot of stunts. You don't see stunts so much anymore. There's a bunch of stunts in this. God.
The part where Arnold Terminator leaves from driving the pickup truck, climbs over the bed onto the front of the semi-truck and fires an assault rifle through the windshield into the driver. Incredible.
It might be my favorite shot in the film. It's a stunning shot, and that is why I might have to be that causeway chase. And between the other two action scenes is the best action scene. It is that amazing.
That's a fair call.
It's just tremendous. But then I don't know. I mean, I think an argument could be made for any of these.
Yeah. I mean, they really flew a freaking helicopter under the freeway overpass.
Holy shit!
That is so crazy.
And even that great little detail of he grows extra arms so he can fire and fly the helicopter. It's amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's spectacular.
God, I love the bit in the factory fight too, where Arnold's like in T-1000 basically fist fighting, and Arnold whips him around and like slams him face first into a wall. And instead of even like turning around, he just morphs his face through the back of his own head. It's just like, oh yeah, we're this deep in the movie and I'm still being reminded like, fuck, you really can't do anything to this guy.
Yeah. I don't have an answer for that, is the truth. I don't know which is the best one, but I guess I'm going to go with the freeway, the chase scene, just because I think it's underrated. I think it's wonderful. Talking about performance bits. I love that part where the guy in the shitty old pickup just gets out and he does a little Sarah Connor hop on his way over to try to help. And then they steal his car and knock off the weird log cabin he has attached to the back of it. I love all that stuff.
I think I will cast my vote for the Asylum Escape because it has the most of the like original Terminator horror overtones to it.
Yeah.
Super effective.
The cop twins. It's got the cop twins.
Yes, the cop twins are great. You've got just like three different prongs of things going on, where Sarah's trying to escape from this way and the Terminator and John are trying to come in this way and the T-1000's coming in from this direction. And the sort of shift from trying to get, the asylum security as the obstacle to, oh shit, the T-1000's here. Now things have really got real. Plus you get that great just sound effect of the T-1000 rolling down the street with his cute little golf club arms.
I
mean, all good. I mean, that's the point, right? Like it's that there's all these scenes in one movie is the insane thing.
I will say my favorite effect in the film is not a digital one. It is at the very end when they've shot the explosive shell into the T-8000. And it's just this John Carpenter thing-esque kind of.
Yeah.
And of course, we can. I love that's just like I just love that shot. There's something about that. It's like grotesque. It's cool, and I love that. That's like probably my favorite effect shot of the whole film.
It's a wonderful design of
it
that,
is
like messed up. It's sort of wonderfully intricately chaotic how he exploded.
Yeah,
but not quite. It's still connected a little bit enough on that like hook on one side.
All right. I think we're getting a little long on this one,
of course.
But of course we are. It's Terminator 2, pretty big movie. We have not talked much about the center of this film, Arnold Schwarzenegger in this movie, and I think maybe a way to do this is to bring up the one thing in this movie that I'm not sure about as we finish out here, which is the emotional bond between the T-800 and John. This is very cheesy. Does it totally work still? Does this play outside of being a John Connor aged person to have this this maudlin "what is wrong with your eyes" scenes, where the Terminator learns what crying is. The Terminator should know what crying is.
Absolutely should. Yes, he should have detailed files.
Yes, exactly.
Detailed files.
Mm-hmm. And it is all this stuff, like the old Yeller stuff, it's so broad and it's so extreme and it's sad in this deeply juvenile way. I kind of love it, is the thing, even as I'm recognizing it as an imperfection and sort of a silliness. It's more than it is effective emotionally. It's sort of,
but of course it works.
This
type of like, Boy and His Dog, E.T., whatever, Mac and Me shit always works. Like it's the Iron Giant. Like they made a whole movie of just that emotional beat, right? I mean,
I guess it is. I guess that's what he is in this. He's kind of an Iron Giant. That's well said.
It actually works for me, but it works for me almost in a reverse way. That my issues with John Connor in the movie, it worked for me because I don't want to say I'm identifying with the Terminator because that sounds like I need all sorts of help, but it's in the sense that I'm a parent. As a parent.
Well, the Terminator didn't know he was going to have to be a parent,
right? But I'm saying, because we already have one human parent in the movie, but he also becomes this other parent. So, like to me, it works. It works like in a reverse bonding way, not because I care so much about John, but because as a parent, I know what it's like to want to protect your child, to love your child, and so like that. At this age,
you identify with John through the Terminator rather than the other way around.
Basically, yeah. So I don't know what to tell you. That's and also because I feel for Sarah, and so like Sarah needs help. Sarah needs help. Sarah, Sarah is looking for someone to help protect John, and so again, the parental strings are what pulls me through. There's never been a heavy identification with John because, like I said, I was in my early 20s when I saw the film for the first time. So it's. Yeah.
Man, that thumbs up though, huh?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Thumbs up. Oh yeah.
Wow.
Brave,
authentic cinema. Yeah.
It works.
It works. Just sort of in an undeniable primal way. That thumbs up works. It's this is sort of the top of the mountain for Arnold, right? This is it makes him the biggest star in the world, but he never quite hits this height. I think we talked about this when we talked about Arnold, but yeah, this is his Everest. It's all kind of just trying to keep this energy and this level of success and wide appeal going. I guess is him for the next 15 years, really. And
well, yeah, it's the bridge. It's still got the one foot in his like the Terminator role, which was built around his limitations as an actor, but this sells that so effectively, like as in a family-friendly packaging, that then Arnold goes on to continue to like, maybe to the detriment of the industry, that family-friendly Arnold blockbusters is like the biggest game in town for another 10 years.
I mean, it is sort of a meta-textual almost arc for him, which is that he starts off as this gigantic blunt machine, and ends up becoming this parental figure over the course of it, and is surprisingly effective in that role. That is sort of what Arnold did. I don't know that we even fully had a grip on that happening at this time. This is before. I think it's actually right around the same time as like Kindergarten Cop, when he started to do these things all in. Right? Is this maybe?
Well, I think we may not have had a strong sense of that, but who did was Arnold. And I would give him credit for this all day long. I think that if there's a genius Arnold Schwarzenegger, it is how he adapts to like changing conditions on the ground. And he saw his opening to become governor of the biggest state in the country and made it happen. And he didn't, I don't think he did that because he had a 15-point plan when he made Conan the Barbarian for, if not world domination, state domination. But I think, you said at the beginning of this that Arnold was hesitant to take this on. He's like, well, this is so silly. I don't even kill anybody. And then he wasn't so like stuck on that take that he, tried to go back to killing more people. Like 2 years later, flash forward, he's like, it'll be great. Put me in a kindergarten. Mm-hmm. It will be a blast. People will love it.
Kindergarten Cop and Twins were both before this.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, Kindergarten Cop was 1990.
I mean, his immediate follow-up to this is Last Action Hero, which of course is, we'll just do that again, do the T2 thing again, right? Me and a kid.
But then I just not to be too, he actually goes the other route, because in 94, of course, he does True Lies with Cameron again. And that's not a bloodless or a non-killing role at all.
No, but
it's like a 90s action movie.
It's a sitcom.
That's true. That is true. Not to get ahead of you, I know you guys will be covering that soon. So
well, he doesn't make movies like Commando anymore, really. I guess he kind of gets back to those. End of Days is like an R-rated movie for adults. I mean, the bloom is a little bit off the rose at that point.
It's a lot off the rose at that point.
Yeah. But like obviously, this is sort of the Arnold movie. This is the biggest one. Financially, the biggest one. Culturally, just the one that sort of defines everything about him. This is where he says "Hasta la vista, baby." This is the one, and man, is he up to the challenge of this? This is a perfect deployment of Arnold Schwarzenegger in all his movie star glory, and that is one of the most self-evident things I've ever said on this podcast.
Yeah, and maybe only the fourth best performance in the movie.
Yeah,
like unquestionably fourth at best. Like
it's between him and the grenade launcher. All right. Well, thank you, Michael, for coming to join us.
I appreciate it. I love being back on. So
yeah,
fun movie to talk about too. Yeah, we've got you on for some really good movies, Michael.
Yeah, I don't know how you managed that. Yeah.
You'll be getting your stipend soon. So
we got to have you back sometime for a real piece of shit. We'll make that. We'll make an effort. Yeah,
do it.
Maybe you can stop in for like chapter 3 of our Avatar: Way of Water podcast series.
Oh God,
it's coming. All right. Hey, please rate and review this podcast on on the podcast provider of your choice. It helps visibility of the program. We would like, more people to listen to this. Was always a good thing. So if you have something to say, that's great. Please write a review. Just rating it is great too, though, and it takes no time at all. So that would help us.
I'll write the review for you. You don't have to think about it. Just say, good episode. My favorite Terminator weapon in this is blank. You can vote for either minigun or tear gas gun, or I guess the rotating shotgun. We didn't even talk about that.
Sure, yeah, that's pretty cool. The way he spins it, yeah. And hey, don't leave out the knives and stabbing weapons. You can use those.
That's right.
All right, yeah.
Or you can also use a hypodermic needle full of Drano. That's my vote.
All right. Thank you all for listening. Hasta la vista, baby.
Yeah, had to.
Ribbit Park.